If you're like me, when Elden Ring first released back in 2022, you literally spent hundreds of hours in the game. To you, it was more than just a game. It became a way of life. And now you're more excited than ever to jump back into the game for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC release, but you don't know where to start. It's been 2 years, you've moved on, you've lived your life, played other games. But no worries, I've got you covered. We're gonna get you out of that heavy armor and back into fighting shape in no time. Hey everyone, I'm Chaz, and in this video, I'm gonna break down some things that you should be doing in the time between now and when the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC releases. And there's a little bit of everything in here, from the best path to access the DLC, some general tips for leveling up, important items to stock up on, some Elden Ring tricks you might have forgotten, and a lot more. But let's kick it off with the most important question of all, where to even start if you want to access the DLC right away. And this is probably the biggest decision that each gamer is going to have to make for themselves. Whether you want to start a fresh new game, go into New Game Plus, or just use your current endgame save to access the DLC straight away. So let's talk about how to access the DLC in the first place. We know by this point that in order to gain access to the Shadowlands, you'll need to go through Mogwin's Palace. To get to Mogwin's Palace, you'll need to progress far enough in the story to beat both Starscourge Radahn and Mog, the Lord of Blood. Depending on how you progress the story, you can either get there in the late game, through this portal here in the Consecrated Snowfield, or relatively early by following Vari's side quest. But Mogwin's Palace can actually be pretty tough, and Mog himself is a decently difficult boss. So if you're not in New Game Plus, I do think the better path is to play through the story and get to Mog the traditional way through the Consecrated Snowfield. That way, your character is leveled up enough and you have a good enough feel for the game that you're able to defeat Mog and enter the Shadowlands, and the difficulty hitting into the DLC should be on par with where you're at in the game. If you're just starting out New Game Plus, however, or you're starting a fresh character but you've played through the game before and you have a good feel for the game's mechanics, you can get to Mog quicker by following Vari's side quest. But personally, I think this is the path that I'm gonna take. I tried jumping right back into my endgame save and realized very quickly that I had forgotten just about everything about this game. So I decided that I'll be starting my New Game Plus 3 run pretty soon so I can get reacquainted with the game, but I am genuinely curious how other players are deciding to shake off the cobwebs and jump into the game, so definitely let me know in the comments below. Okay, but once you figured that part out, what about just general leveling and difficulty? What level should you be at heading into the DLC, and should you be spending time leveling up your character? Well, the answer to that is definitely yes, but also no. Let me explain. In a recent interview, Miyazaki confirmed that there will be a new leveling system for the DLC similar to what we got in Sekiro. In Sekiro, you got prayer beads for each boss and mini-boss you killed, and those were used to level up your character. This system pretty much eliminated the ability to farm for upgrades and made the leveling up system very linear. Changing up the leveling system in Elden Ring specifically for the DLC is a bit of a risky move, but I also kinda like it. Because Elden Ring has been out for more than 2 years already, there are a lot of overleveled players out there. If nothing else, I feel like this system is at least going to help bring a little bit of parity back to the game and should make it a challenge for both new and more experienced players. I think it'll be interesting to see just how this is implemented though. When you travel to the Shadowlands, are you going to be stripped of your level and brought back down to basics? And then you can get your level back up again when you travel out of the DLC area? We'll just have to wait and see. But in terms of just general difficulty, it does sound as though the difficulty for the DLC is about what we can expect from some of the later game areas like Khalid or even Altus Plateau. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you're decently leveled heading into the DLC. For most players that beat the game for the first time, they're typically between levels 100 and 150. So that's probably what I'd recommend if you're a new player heading into the game. Now, one of the absolute easiest ways to prepare for the DLC, which I haven't heard any of the other big channels talking about, is to make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Yeah, that's right. It literally takes about a half a second, and I have a ton more Shadow of the Erdtree content planned that you're definitely not going to want to miss. Now, once you've got that part out of the way, you'll probably also want to spend some time collecting all the upgrade materials that you're going to need to make sure that your weapons can be upgraded. I'm sure by this point you already have your favorite weapons in the game and have them upgraded to max level. But we also recently learned that in the DLC there's going to be 8 new weapon types. Not 8 new weapons total, 8 entirely new weapons categories, which undoubtedly is going to include dozens of new weapons to choose from. And you'll probably also want to upgrade them straight away, so it's a good idea to stock up on bell bearings or at least smithing stones and somber smithing stones heading into the DLC. Now, if it's been a while since you've upgraded weapons in Elden Ring, here's a quick refresher on how it works.
Let's go smithing.
There are basically 2 different types of weapons. Basic weapons are armaments, and special armaments like boss weapons. Basic weapons can be upgraded to level 25 and require levels 1 through 8 smithing stones, which can take them to level 24. And then an ancient dragon smithing stone is required to upgrade it to its max level of 25. Now, special weapons can be upgraded to level 10 and require levels 1 through 9 somber smithing stones, which will take them up to level 9, and a somber ancient dragon smithing stone to upgrade it to its max level of 10. Now, both ancient dragon smithing stones and somber ancient dragon smithing stones are finite, meaning you could only pick up a certain number of them within a single playthrough, whereas regular smithing stones and somber smithing stones can be found in the world or purchased in limited supply from merchants, but they can also be quite difficult to find, especially the higher level ones, and especially when you really need just one more to upgrade your weapon. But it is possible to purchase an infinite number of smithing stones and somber smithing stones by collecting and turning in all the bell bearings to the twin maidens within the round table hold. So if you haven't yet collected all the bell bearings or somber bell bearings, this is something you'll definitely want to do before heading into the DLC, and to help, I've linked a map in the description below which can help you find them all. It's just going to make upgrading those new weapons in the DLC that much easier. Now lastly, here's a couple of quick tips just to help you jump back into the game. These are things that I definitely needed to be reminded of, so hopefully they're helpful for you as well. Starting with your pouch. Your default pouch has 4 slots which you can use for quick access to items like your healing flask. But you can also access a secondary pouch by holding triangle on PlayStation or Y on Xbox, which gives you an access to secondary items. And you can easily swap out those items from the menu. I like to use this secondary pouch to make sure that I have quick access to torrent, and also make sure that I have helpful consumables like boluses or boiled prawns handy if I need them. Next, when prepping your build, be sure to keep your eye on your poise. Basically, the higher your poise, the less likely it is that you're going to be staggered by the enemy. You typically want to have your poise around level 50 or 51, which is going to make it much less likely that you're going to get staggered. In order to increase your poise, you want to equip heavier armor pieces, but the flip side of that is that it'll increase your weight, so you also need to keep an eye on your endurance level. I also didn't realize until way late in the game that if you're fast traveling to the round table hold, there's a much easier way to do it than just scrolling all the way down to the bottom left corner of the screen. You can get there much quicker by pressing triangle on PlayStation or Y on Xbox to bring up the list of all the sites of grace, and then pressing square on PlayStation or X on Xbox, which will automatically select the round table hold. From that same screen, you can also click R3 to mark certain sites of grace as favorites, which will put a little mark next to them indicating that it's a favorite. This has saved me a ton of time in the game when navigating back to specific merchants, or back to different NPCs, or finishing side quests. And lastly, you can two-hand your primary weapon by holding down triangle on PlayStation or Y on Xbox and pressing L1. This not only changes the moveset for that weapon, but it also increases your strength scaling by 50%. Meaning if you're using a strength weapon, you can get a decent damage buff, but this also gives you an opportunity to try out a different weapon that you might be underleveled for. And personally, I think sometimes this just looks a little bit cooler. Alright, and that's my list of things that I'm doing to prepare myself for the Shadow of the Erdtree release. But what about you? Let me know some of your best prep tips in the comments below. And hey, be sure to subscribe because I have a ton more Shadow of the Erdtree content planned, and you're not going to want to miss any of it. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.